Google acquired the HTC team that built the new Pixel 2. Let's see what the search giant bought for $1 billion. Strangely enough, the smaller of the two devices hasn't changed much, but the larger Pixel 2 XL is much more in step with modern flagships. First things first, let's check what's new. Google upgraded to the flagship standard Snapdragon 835 chipset, and the phones run Android 8.0 Oreo out of the box. The screens are AMOLED with pixel densities identical to their predecessors, but there are stereo speakers above and below now. The headphone jack is dead, however. The new Pixels do not feature dual cameras. Google believes it can keep its edge with just one. It was always about that HDR+ processing anyway. Optical image stabilization is a nice addition to the feature set. The old DIS lives on too. We're glad to see stereo speakers back, but other old Nexus features remain absent, wireless charging and high-grade water resistance. So that's the Google Pixel 2 for you. It has a 5 inches 1080 pixels AMOLED, a new chipset and not a great deal more. Well, outside of HTC's squeezable feature, this time tied to Google Assistant. 5 inches AMOLED display with 441 ppi. 12 megapixels camera with OIS and dual pixel AF. 4K video recording. Snapdragon 835 chipset on board with an octa-core CPU and Adreno 540 GPU. The Pixel 2 will have 4 GB of RAM and 64 GB or 128 GB of internal storage. Note that the device won't have micro SD slot. Finally, the Pixel 2 has a 2700 mAh battery with USB power delivery. The Google Pixel 2 XL did see a redesign. Those heavy top and bottom bezels have been shaved down to more manageable levels. Not quite bezel-less, but the new XL is part of the 18.9 screen crew. This handset was built by LG. Perhaps it reminds you of a certain other fall flagship? Metal and glass with IP67 certification. 6 inches AMOLED display with QHD+ resolution and 537 ppi. The Pixel 2 XL has an always-on display mode. 12 megapixels camera with OIS and dual pixel AF. 4K video recording and obviously, Android 8.0 out of the box. The Google Pixel 2 XL is boasted by a Snapdragon 835 chipset with an octa-core CPU and 4 GB of RAM. The internal storage is 64 GB or 128 GB. 3520 mAh of battery capacity for the Pixel 2 XL and stereo speakers. Google is a software company that rarely dabbles in hardware. Perhaps that is why it's apprehensive about using cutting-edge hardware. Why use a dual camera when you have dozens of PhDs who can write amazing software like HDR+? The Pixel 2 XL has the more modern design of the two. Bezels have been the enemy for a while, but it wasn't until wider than 16:9 screens came around that the current flagship look was perfected. The screen expands vertically, eating up bezels as it goes and ending with rounded corners. A two-tone design is not new. HTC was doing it in 2015 as a special finish for the One M9, but we have to say we like the Stormtrooper look of the black and white 2 XL. The glass window on the back is smaller now, but just as useless. Glassback equals wireless charging isn't a rule, but we think it should be. We do love the finish on the aluminum. It's matte with a sort of rough texture that's very gray and pleasant to touch. While they weigh the same as their predecessors, the new thinner bodies make the 2017 Pixels feel more svelte. But let's keep our focus on the front. It's the side of this Pixel that has changed the most. Despite the wider screen, the engineers found room to fit front-facing stereo speakers, always a boon for heavy media consumers, music and video alike. The screen is new as well, still in AMOLED, but 6 inches now and with QHD+ resolution. That's 1440 by 2880 pixels, extra 280 pixels vertically over last year's model. In fact, the new 6 inches screen is exactly as wide as the old 5.5 inches screen. The extra height gives you around 11% more screen surface area. Google also enabled always-on display, a feature related to the active display of the Moto X but more refined. Also, the screen has 100% coverage over DCI-P3. We're impressed with the image quality, but there's a slight color shift at an angle, same as the V30. You could say that the front of the Pixel 2 XL looks like the LG V30, but that's only half right. For one, the bezels are thicker, for another, they house speakers. Obviously the back is wildly different. The major omission here is the lack of a second camera of any kind. This limits the extra effects that the camera can pull off. A pricey second-generation device shouldn't be missing features the majority of its competitors have. The camera has a brighter aperture, focal aperture of 1.8, but also a smaller sensor, 1.2 for 6 inches. For comparison, pixel size went down from 1.55 micrometer to 1.4 micrometer. Optical image stabilization and dual pixel AF are great additions for low light shooting, however. This in addition to the laser AF and EIS that were present in the original Pixels. Google says the photo and video quality is better than iPhone 8's. Speaking of video, Google could not match Apple in frame rate. You're still getting 4K on 30 FPS and 1080 on 120 FPS tops, same as the first-gen Pixel camera. To be fair, neither can the new Galaxy Note 8 or LG V30. The updated camera app offers motion photos, which capture a 3-second clip. Google's AI smarts analyze the clip to make it loop smoother and to avoid blurry action. The Pixel 2 XL is not an affordable device, especially in Europe. But it lacks a few things that similarly priced phones have: wireless charging and a headphone jack. And we get no upsides for those omissions. It's not cheaper, it's not lighter, there's no extra room for a larger battery. No, I have the new Pixel, it has a smaller glass on the back. We can already hear ourselves arguing with imaginary friends who think we're using the 2016 Google phone. To be fair to those fictional non-believers, not much has changed besides the chipset. Google bumped up the base storage to 64 GB, up from 32 GB, which is nice since we're never getting a micro SD slot. And stereo speakers are a nice add-on. You will never hear us say wish it had just one loudspeaker. We also appreciate the waterproofing. The display sticks to a 5 inches AMOLED panel with 1080 pixels resolution. It does add always-on display functionality and it covers 95% of DCI-P3, but the original Pixel dropped down $100 in price, so it's not obvious that the new model is the better pick. If we're sounding too negative, we should make it clear that we think the Pixel 2 is a solid device. But we don't think it's a mass-market device. It will sell about as many units as the 2016 model. How many people you know that have one? The squeeze feature, Active Edge, is curious, but hardly necessary. It triggers the Google Assistant and it silences alarms. You can enable or disable it when the screen is locked. Still, we've heard what people have to say about the Bixby button. Will this really be different? What impressed us more is Google Lens. It's an exclusive feature at launch, not even the old Pixels have it, though Google will eventually do a wide release. What's Lens? It uses the camera to automatically pull up info for landmarks, objects, famous paintings or even small details like dates or emails. You can trigger Lens from the Google Photos app as well. Google has committed to provide software upgrades for 3 years. But HMD said it will update the Nokias to Android P. So that's not that much of an advantage. What do you think of the new Google Pixel 2 and Google Pixel 2 XL? Let us know your thoughts in comments. To discover more Android-related content, don't hesitate to subscribe to the S Sorrels channel.